when I sit in stillness and let the memories of my younger self rise to the surface. I am often struck by how much tenderness she needed and how little she truly believed in her own strength. I see her with her dreams, too big for her hands to hold, and her fears too heavy for her small shoulders to carry. I wish I could sit with her, not to change her path, but to remind her that every bruise, every tear, every silence was shaping a woman who would one day learn to breathe through storms and find beauty in survival. There is something deeply healing about looking back, not with judgment, but with compassion. We often think our younger selves should have known better, should have been braver, should have chosen differently. But the truth is, they did the best they could with the light they had at the time. And it is only now, standing where we are, that we can reach back and offer them the love they never thought they deserved. To say, you were enough then, and you are enough now. Motivation is not always a loud voice telling you to keep going. Sometimes it's the quiet whisper that reminds you to forgive yourself for stumbling. Sometimes it's the courage to sit in the mirror with your past self, the child who cried at night, the teenager who doubted every part of her reflection, the young adult who thought the world was too heavy to survive. Motivation comes in that small, unshakable truth you made it through. You carried her step by step into this moment. And maybe the real purpose of reflection is not to criticize the girl we once were, but to embrace her, to thank her. Because she was the one who stood in the fire before we even knew what resilience meant. She was the one who gave us the raw material of our courage. When we connect with her now, we are not just looking back. We are completing a circle, telling her, I see you, I honor you, I am proud of you. There is a kind of peace in that connection. It softens the edges of regret and quiets the echoes of doubt. It allows us to carry forward with a gentleness toward ourselves, the kind of gentleness that doesn't demand perfection, but celebrates persistence. We become both the protector and the protected, the guide and the guided, the healer and the healed. And in that union, we find a motivation that is rooted not in fear of failure, but in the deep knowing that every version of ourselves is worthy of love, respect, and acceptance. Healing begins when we look back at our younger self with compassion instead of criticism, because the truth is, much of the pain we carry in the present is tied to how harshly we judge the person we used to be. We remember the moments we felt small, the choices we wish we hadn't made, the times when fear silenced us, and we replay them in our minds as if those versions of ourselves were failures. But what if instead of labeling them as mistakes, we saw them as necessary steps on the path that brought us here? That younger self was not weak. She was surviving with the tools she had, doing the best she could in circumstances she couldn't always control. When we hold her in judgment, we prolong her suffering. When we hold her in compassion, we finally allow her to rest. And looking back with compassion means allowing space for tenderness. And it means standing in the shoes of that younger version of ourselves and asking, what was she feeling? What was she missing? What did she truly need? It's easy to see from where we stand now that she could have handled things differently. But wisdom is a gift of time, not a burden she should have carried too soon. Compassion whispers to her, you didn't know then what you know now, and that is not a flaw, but a truth of growth. It softens the inner voice that berates us for being too trusting, too naive, too fragile, and replaces it with understanding. Instead of saying, I can't believe you let that happen, compassion says, I see how hard that was for you, and I honor the way you endured it. This shift is not only healing, it is transformative. To look back without criticism is to free ourselves from a cycle of self-punishment. It is to let go of the chains of regret that tie us to a distorted past. But every harsh word we direct inward is like reopening an old wound, while every gentle word we offer is like laying a balm across scars that ache for comfort. Compassion does not erase what happened, but it changes the way it lives in us. Instead of carrying those memories as burdens, we begin to carry them as testimonies of endurance. We begin to see the courage it took simply to keep going, and we start to honor ourselves for the strength that was present even when we could not recognize it. Compassion is also the bridge that allows us to reconnect with the innocence and wonder that lived in our younger self. Too often, in criticism, we bury not only the mistakes, but also the light, the dreams, the creativity, the unguarded joy. When we return to that self with kindness, we can reclaim those lost treasures. We can say, yes, you stumbled, but you also loved deeply. Yes, you felt uncertain, but you also imagined freely. Yes, you struggled, but you also carried sparks of brilliance that still live within me now. This reclaiming awakens parts of us that were silenced under shame, reminding us that we are not defined by our flaws, but by the fullness of our humanity. To practice this kind of reflection takes courage, because it is easier to criticize than to show compassion, easier to judge than to forgive. But each time we choose compassion, we rewrite the story of our past. We take the younger self who felt abandoned and remind her she was never truly alone. We take the younger self who felt unworthy and remind her she always held value. We take the younger self who believed she was broken and remind her she was whole all along. By doing this, we don't just heal her, we heal the present self who still carries her voice inside. In the end, healing through compassion is about acceptance. It's about embracing every version of ourselves as part of the journey, honoring the child who hoped, the teenager who doubted, the young adult who searched, and the person who kept walking through it all. It's about standing face to face with the younger self, not as judge, but as friend, as guide, as source of unconditional love. And when we learn to meet her with that tenderness, something remarkable happens inside us. The guilt quiets, the shame softens, the regret loses its power, and what remains is peace. A peace born from knowing we are not at war with who we were, but in harmony with who we have always been. Our younger self carried the raw weight of pain and dreams that shaped the resilience we now embody. And when we reflect on that truth, it becomes clear that every version of us was preparing the ground for the strength we carry today. Pain is not something we choose, yet it finds us in unexpected ways. As children or teenagers, we rarely understood why certain losses, disappointments, or betrayals had to come our way. We only knew the sting of rejection, the heaviness of loneliness, the ache of not being seen. Those emotions felt unbearable, but within them, seeds of endurance were being planted. Each time our younger self cried quietly in the dark, each time she faced ridicule, each time she dared to dream beyond her circumstances, she was shaping a resilience she could not yet name. She was giving us the raw materials of courage and strength, often without even realizing it. Dreams, too, carried their weight. The longing to be more, to experience more, to live a life filled with meaning was often too big for her small hands to hold. And yet, even when others dismissed those dreams, even when the world told her she was asking for too much, she held on. She may have buried them for a time, doubted them, even felt unworthy of them, but still they burned within her. That fire, fragile as it was, never went out. It is that same fire that fuels us now, a fire that reminds us to keep moving forward despite obstacles, to keep reaching despite setbacks. The younger self carried those dreams not only for her, but for the person we would eventually become, preserving them through uncertainty so that one day they could bloom in us. Resilience is not born in moments of ease. It is born in moments of trial. The younger self endured more than we often acknowledge. She walked into rooms that made her feel invisible. She endured words that cut deeply, sometimes sharper than any wound could bleed. She faced circumstances that made her question her worth. And yet, she got back up. Sometimes with trembling hands, sometimes with doubt in her heart, but she got up anyway. Every time she rose from disappointment, she gave us the strength we carry today. Every time she endured something that seemed unbearable, she was teaching us how to withstand storms that would come later in life. Her survival was not perfect, but it was powerful, and without her persistence, we would not stand as we do now. We often overlook the bravery it takes to carry dreams alongside pain. To hope while hurting is an act of resilience in itself. The younger self managed to nurture that fragile hope in the middle of confusion and fear. Even when she questioned herself, she kept imagining a brighter day. That act of imagining was no small thing. It was a declaration against despair. She may not have known it, but in those quiet moments of wishing and believing, she was fortifying the spirit we live with now. That mixture of ache and hope, of wounds and longing, became the foundation for our strength. It allowed us to become people who don't just survive challenges, but find ways to rise stronger because of them. Carrying pain and dreams together is heavy work, especially for a young heart. But that weight created depth within us, depth that allows us to feel deeply, to empathize with others, to find meaning in our struggles. Without her, we might not have the same compassion, the same ability to stand in the fire and keep walking. Without her, we would not have the same resilience that now shapes how we meet life's challenges. She was not weak for crying, for doubting, for stumbling. She was strong for continuing, for daring to dream, for refusing to let go of the possibility of something better. Now, when we feel the resilience within us, it is important to recognize that it is not something we built alone in the present. It is the gift of every past version of ourselves. The child who longed for love, the teenager who dared to hope, the young adult who carried disappointment yet kept reaching forward. They are all part of the strength we embody today. The resilience we carry is not just ours, it is theirs. It belongs to the younger self who carried both pain and dreams, refusing to let either one destroy the other. And in honoring her, we honor the path that led us here. True motivation comes from embracing every version of ourselves as worthy, loved, and complete, because within each stage of our life lies a piece of the whole person we are today. We spend so much time running from who we used to be, ashamed of mistakes, embarrassed by missteps, or haunted by moments we wish had never happened. But the truth is, every single version of us carried a sacred role in shaping our identity. But when we finally stop pushing them away and instead welcome them with open arms, and we discover a deeper motivation than any outside achievement could ever offer. Motivation rooted in acceptance is stronger than motivation driven by fear, because it is not about proving something to others. It is about honoring the person we have always been. When we look back at our younger selves, there are moments we want to erase. Perhaps it is the awkward child who never felt like she belonged, the teenager who tried to fit in and lost pieces of herself along the way, or the young adult who stumbled through decisions and questioned every choice. But erasing them would mean erasing the lessons they gave us, the resilience they built within us, the dreams they passed down to us. And to embrace every version of ourselves is to say, I will not abandon you. I will not deny the role you played. I will love you even in your imperfection, because your imperfection is part of my wholeness. There is freedom in that embrace. Freedom from the constant inner battle of trying to prove that we are finally good enough. And when we see that we were always worthy, even in our confusion, even in our uncertainty, we release the pressure to earn love or acceptance from the world. We begin to understand that worth is not something achieved, it is something inherent. Every version of us, from the smallest child to the present self, has always been worthy, loved, and complete, even when we couldn't feel it. Motivation born from that truth does not burn out like motivation driven by comparison or fear. It becomes a steady flame, sustained by self-acceptance and compassion. Embracing our past selves also means embracing the lessons they carried. The younger self who failed taught us humility. The one who hoped in the middle of disappointment taught us persistence. The one who fell apart taught us how to rebuild. Each version of ourselves was both teacher and student, leaving behind wisdom for the future. By embracing them, we gather that wisdom and carry it forward. We stop viewing them as weak or broken and begin to see them as guides who walked the road before us so we could step onto solid ground. Motivation becomes less about erasing what has been and more about honoring what has been, letting the truth of those past versions strengthen the foundation we stand on. There is also power in recognizing that every version of us is still alive within us. The child who longed for safety, the teenager who wanted to be seen, the young adult who sought meaning. They are still present, and they still whisper in our hearts. When we deny them, those whispers become cries that echo as self-doubt and regret. But when we embrace them, those whispers become songs of encouragement. They remind us of how far we've come and how much we've endured, how much potential still lives inside us. Embracing them turns our inner world into a chorus of voices, not in conflict, but in harmony, each one adding strength to our present journey. Motivation that arises from wholeness is gentle yet powerful. It is not about forcing ourselves to be something we are not, but about fully inhabiting who we have always been. It is the kind of motivation that says, I move forward not because I am lacking, but because I am overflowing. I take steps not to earn love, but to express love for myself in every form I have ever taken. I honor the girl who was afraid. I honor the woman who survived. I honor the person I am now who continues to grow. That embrace fuels a deeper drive, one that can withstand setbacks, because it is not rooted in insecurity, but in unconditional acceptance. When we learn to love every version of ourselves, we no longer see our life as a fragmented story. Instead, we see it as a seamless tapestry, each thread, light or dark, woven into something beautiful and whole. This wholeness itself becomes motivation, reminding us that we are not missing pieces, we are not broken, we are not incomplete. We are everything we were meant to be, carrying within us all the strength, all the lessons, and all the love that our journey required. To embrace this is to unlock a motivation that does not fade because it is not tied to achievement, but to the undeniable truth that we are and always have been enough. When we choose to connect with our younger self through reflection and compassion, we discover that the journey was never about perfection, but about becoming whole. Every struggle, every mistake, and every dream carried forward has shaped the strength we embody today. We are not separate from the child who hoped, the teenager who doubted, or the young adult who stumbled. They are all alive within us, waiting not for judgment, but for acknowledgement. By embracing them with tenderness, we unlock a peace that no achievement can give, a peace that comes from knowing that we were always worthy, always loved, always enough. This understanding becomes the foundation of true motivation. It is no longer about chasing validation or erasing the past, but about honoring every chapter of our story as sacred. When we meet ourselves with compassion, we walk lighter, freer, and more open to the future because we are no longer burdened by shame or regret. We step forward not to fix who we were, but to celebrate who we have become. And in that celebration lies the courage to keep moving, the resilience to keep believing, and the faith to trust that every version of ourselves has always been preparing us for this very moment.